All right, everybody, welcome to the CPUSA struggle session. But I don't want you to get too welcome because this is going to be serious business. And today we're laying down the hammer, and I'm going to air the dirty laundry of the CPUSA leadership. And we're going to do something tonight. We're going to make a critique of it, because we make a critique of it so that we can prove it the next time. And we keep critiquing it until we get it right. And that's what we're setting out and we're aiming to do today.
2 + 2 is 6.
So y'all get ready and buckle up. Thank you so much. What the fuck? What is going on? Thank you so much, Wayne King. And thank you, Not Random. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate y'all. Appreciate y'all. Thank you so much, guys. And that's why we're Maoists, right? And I don't know, we're not Western Maoists, but we're a type of Maoist where we recognize the significance of Mao Zedong thought and the contribution he has made to the history of Marxism-Leninism. Y'all understand? And, you know, this is a joke, struggle session. Yeah, it's a little mean. But I'm being for real here, because we do have to have this struggle session. We do got to deal with the issue of why the CPUSA isn't a party of millions and millions and millions of people, and why the gatekeepers are preventing this from becoming a mass movement that is going to be the preeminent and premier party of the American working class. There's no fucking excuse. Anyone who wants to sit here and tell me there's a fucking excuse, go ahead and request so you can tell me there's a fucking excuse. Go ahead and request and give me your motherfucking excuses, because there should be none. It should be none. It's been over 100 years since the October Revolution. We got a Communist Party USA that's literally smaller than the Magic the Gathering Foundation. It's literally smaller than the Yu-Gi-Oh! Convention. It's literally smaller than an anime convention. It's literally smaller than a motherfucking furry convention. And there's no excuse for that. Thank you so much, Finny. Appreciate you so much for the dono. Thank you so much for the dono. And if you want to say it's an issue of money and it's an issue of funding, you can't say that, because the CPUSA has buildings, historic buildings that they own in downtown Manhattan. They own a 7-story building. I mean, they pretty much got as much funding as anyone would ever fucking need to get something going off the ground. I'm a random dude from Michigan, but just because I've applied Marxism-Leninism correctly in the age of multipolarity and media theory, I have been able to understand. I have been able to understand how to do this shit. I've been able to understand how to grow something, how to grow bigger than the CPUSA does. So there is absolutely no excuse. There's absolutely no excuse whatsoever that we can salvage or we can get from this bullshit. You understand? So anyway, continuing on from what I'm saying. The thing you have to keep in mind is that the CPUSA never went through its cultural revolution. They never adopted Mao Zedong thought. They never become a party of the working class. They're a party of gatekeepers, of professional managerials, of bureaucrats. They tail the Democrats in an age of overwhelming distrust and dissatisfaction with both parties. They don't even critique the two-party system. They tail the Democrats and they tell us, oh, we can only choose between the Democrats and the Republicans. And it all becomes vote blue no matter who, and it becomes a fucking vehicle with which to help Biden get elected or help the latest fucking Democrat get elected. How much longer is it going to take before we're going to start seeing this pro-war fascist turn of the Democrats have the CPUSA come out and just support anybody who's blue? Anybody who's blue. I mean, they can't even see the historical realignment that's going on right now. You don't got to agree with Trump, just like we don't agree with the Democrats. But can the CPUSA at least recognize as a positive development at least the lip service that Trump was giving to anti-imperialism? Because that's not nothing. That's not nothing. You don't have to support Trump, just like I don't think we should support the Democrats. But you talk about something, you should acknowledge that here for the first time you had a mainstream candidate critiquing the wars and critiquing American foreign policy and then critiquing our interventions abroad and promoting that they want peace with Russia. These are all commendable things that the CPUSA should be praising. And if they're not going to praise it, they should at the very least recognize it as a positive development, that there's this, and then now there's a significant portion, 50% of the population is skeptical about the pro-war narrative of what's going on in Ukraine. That's a positive development. Oh, but no, you don't agree with them on cultural issues and dumb bullshit like that. So you're going to what? You're going to sacrifice what is the primary contradiction that we're facing today, which is U.S. imperialism. And that's another thing that we need to have a struggle session about, and we need to talk about, is that the CPUSA doesn't understand the distinction between primary and secondary contradictions. It only seems like they recognize one type of contradiction, which is, everything at once. It's just everything's a fucking primary contradiction. Toilets and genders are a fucking primary fucking contradiction. Abortion's the primary I mean, you can't even, and sometimes it's as simple as saying something like, get your damn priorities straight. Anti-imperialism is the primary contradiction that we're facing today. Thank you so much, Bodega Man. Appreciate you, brother. Appreciate you so much. That's the primary contradiction that we're facing today, and it should be the premier focus of the CPUSA's efforts, at least in terms of mapping on and understanding, having a class analysis in this country, the forces positioned against imperialism in this country, whether they come from the petite bourgeoisie, whether they come from the working class, hell, whether they even come from some factions of the bourgeoisie, are objectively a more progressive element than the imperialist bourgeoisie or the imperialist ruling class. I mean, this is a no-brainer, right? Why is this something we even have to discuss when this is a very basic Maoist position that's been held for a very long time? Thank you so much, Chris Morlock. Appreciate you. This is something Lenin talked about. Lenin talked about how imperialism was the primary contradiction. Lenin talked about, as a matter of fact, how communists should be aligned with the democratic petty bourgeoisie that was opposed to imperialism, that was opposed to the imperialist ruling class. So when you want to talk about popular fronts, I'm not a Trotskyist. I don't believe that the Communist Party should have a position of class isolationism where they don't recognize the need for a broad popular front that does cut into other classes besides the working class. But they got it all wrong. They think that the popular front means entering into an alliance with the fucking Democrats, which are the premier party of U.S. imperialism, rather than trying to align themselves with the plethora of forces positioned in this country, class forces in this country, positioned against the two-party system in general. The populist currents in this country that are skeptical of both. Because, the Republicans are bought out and they're the establishment, and we know the Democrats are bought out and they're the establishment. I am not an ideological fanatic. I understand that bourgeois democracy is something that communists have to take a role of defending. That Stalin's last speech was a speech to the communist parties of the world, telling them that they have to take up the banner of defending basic bourgeois liberties. So I agree with that. But the Democrats and the Republicans and the imperialist establishment, they don't represent bourgeois democracy. As a matter of fact, they represent the forces that are day by day, inch by inch, encroaching upon every last democratic bourgeois liberties that we have, from our First Amendment rights to their monopolist economic rigging to all sorts of fucked up activity that they're engaging in when it comes to spying and surveillance and censoring journalists. I mean, look what they did to Julian Assange and the rest of it. Look at things like the Patriot Act, right? Look at these new laws they're trying to pass surrounding domestic terrorism because of what happened on a date that I guess I can't name on fucking Twitter. Thank you so much, Nodbrand. Appreciate you so much for the 10. These represent principal obstacles and threats to any semblance of bourgeois democracy. Right, but the CPUSA's leadership has slanderously accused us of engaging in some kind of Trotskyist critique of them, where we're saying, oh, they don't like how we're allied with the Democrats. They would just prefer that we be some kind of sectarian, dogmatic people who don't make any inroads with the masses. No, that's not fucking true. But you have to recognize that the democratic bourgeois struggle, right, that they're going to be aligning themselves with isn't going to be coming from the Democrats. It's going to be coming from a broad populistic momentum. And remember the lesson of Lenin. It's the Mensheviks who wanted to side with the big liberal city bourgeoisie and who got too cozy with the cadets, who were basically the equivalent of Democrats in Russia at the time. And actually, Mensheviks aligned with cadets using the excuse of the Black Hundred threat. And they literally used that excuse. And what did Lenin say? He said, no, that Black Hundred threat that you're talking about does not justify the degree to which you have entered into a coalition with the cadets, who were the party of the city, urban, and liberal big bourgeoisie. right? What Lenin reproached the Mensheviks with saying is that, yes, the proletariat alone is not strong enough to carry out a revolution, which is why we need to align ourselves with the democratic petty bourgeoisie who are in the countryside, which is the peasant element. It's the peasants, the people who are hungry for their own land, who want to become small capitalists of the future. Those are the people we align ourselves with, not the big city liberal bourgeoisie, because as Lenin pointed out, whatever historically progressive role was played by the bourgeoisie, that is not represented by the big city bourgeoisie that is in bed with the czarist autocracy, right? That's represented by those peasants who represent the embryonic capitalist class, a new capitalist class in its infancy that hasn't become a capitalist class yet. And we see a similar phenomena in this country. The Democratic Party and you can't even really call them a capitalist class anymore, because it's a class of rentier, feudalistic monopolists who don't operate on the basis of any real profit, like value generating profit principle anymore, but are these rentier monopolists who are sucking the real economy dry, or any semblance of it, and the structure of their revenue is completely different from the traditional structure of capitalist revenue, which is based on the exploitation of living labor, right? So you're dealing with that type of capitalist class right now. And that's the class that the CPUSA is effectively telling us we have to tail behind when they say that we got to go and get behind the fucking Democrats. Now, I understand the need for pragmatism. I understand the need for being realistic and not having your fucking head in the clouds. I understand that you need to be able to recognize that you can't just have one ideological party that's positioned against the whole of society. But from a scientific socialist perspective, we can see there is a broad, populistic, democratic type of discontent with these countries' ruling elites and with the direction this country's in going. And it's based in this kind of classical bourgeois democracies, increasing encroachments upon our basic bourgeois liberties, upon our First Amendment, upon things like that. Though that's the progressive bourgeoisie that we have to be aligning with, not the fucking people that are in power that represent some kind of return of fucking feudalism, right? And you'd think this would be common sense for the CPUSA. And most pathetically is that they keep using this excuse that somehow, the reason is because we need to make we need to make inroads with the masses. And if we go your path, Haas, we're going to become marginalized. No, you won't. You're marginalized right now. The Democrats see you as a fucking embarrassment. They don't want anything to do with you. And every time you endorse them and try to help the fucking Democrats, the only thing they reproach you with is by saying, hey, stay away from us because we don't want your endorsement because it makes us look bad, right? So it's like they have no fucking excuse for their policy of tailing the Democrats whatsoever. There's no excuse at all. And then you talk about trying to make inroads with the masses. Well, I'm sorry. I used to watch and stream almost every single one of their little like public meetings, Good Morning Revolution, which is the national committee of the Communist Party. They used to stream these meetings where they're like, oh yeah, we're going to talk about the latest events of the day. I'm sorry, I'm going to go ahead and insult them, and I'm allowed to insult them because I'm not in the fucking party, so I'm not subjected to party discipline. If you are in the party, don't insult the leaders. You know, it's still the party that you're in, but I'm going to do it. These are a bunch of stumbling, mumbling buffoons. These people don't know what the fuck they're doing. I've watched their Good Morning Revolution shit, and they literally sit in a fucking Zoom call and they just throw out ideas about things that they should have actually read up on and that they should know. You know, you got Joe Sims out here. He's going, so Rosanna, isn't that right that in 1991, the Soviet Union, it was dissolved and Russia's not the Soviet Union anymore. Isn't that right? It's like, yeah, I mean, you should be able to have a real coherent analysis of what's fucking going on here, which you should be providing to your fucking, you shouldn't be just spitballing ideas and speculating. I mean, how are these leaders? How are these leaders of a communist party? It's a fucking laughingstock. It's absolutely a fucking joke, right? And then you got Anita Waters, who's like the liberal of the fucking National Committee, where she's like, oh, and I really find it so contemptible that what Putin's doing, and you guys, it's like she sounds like any other fucking like old white liberal lady that you fucking see at the library. She sounds like an old white lady librarian or some shit that you just randomly just, you know, like an NPC character that's pre-programmed. I mean, you can't seriously sit here and tell me that these people are serious about building a working class movement. They are so out of touch, not only with the working class, but even with the youth that are expressing some kind of interest in communism. They don't know how to relate to people. They don't know how to spread, they don't understand this information age. And, you know, they keep wait, and what they do is they're professionals at wasting time. Every single one of their Good Morning Revolution podcasts is a waste of fucking time. It's like if you're forced to attend that, you would walk away learning nothing. All of their education seminars are not actually about equipping their members with the ability to analyze the world, but equipping them with the ability to recite the right empty and dry fucking verses in order to like virtue signal their fealty and loyalty to the organization. So we have a really big fucking problem on our hands. And if we keep going down this path, and I've said this before, the Communist Party USA as we know it is bound to dissolve. And that's just the thing. You know, I've heard whispers and I've heard things that they're planning on retiring that party. They don't want to keep that party running anymore. They're starting to sell some of the historic financial assets of the Communist Party. And I think that's their ultimate goal, is to kind of like keep it on a lifeline and then slowly pull the plug one day while no one's looking, and then everyone's just gonna fucking forget about it. I don't think that should happen. I am a communist. I'm not a democratic socialist. I'm not a so-called socialist. I'm not a so-called social democrat. I'm not a fucking progressive. I'm a communist with a capital fucking C. And I think it's just about time that we would restore some dignity to that word and restore some dignity to that name, and have a serious and real communist party in this country. And I don't think that's so much to fucking ask. I don't think it's so much to ask that we should have a serious communist with a capital C party in this country. And we're not democratic socialists. We're not progressives. We're not social democrats. We're not this or that type of socialist. We're not Democrats. We're not liberals. We're communists with a capital C. That deserves to have its own party. That deserves to be its own political current. It deserves to be its own political party, because we have a unique way of looking at the world and understanding the world that all these other so-called leftists don't. We don't have a party. You call yourself a communist, you're basically just a fucking liberal or a progressive who's flirting with some edgy ideas. And if you're serious about it, then you're going to understand what I'm saying, that we need a fucking communist party in this country. It's not rocket science. If we are communists and we're serious about it, we need our own serious communist party. They have democratic socialists, they have socialists, they have liberals, they have progressives, and none of them have any semblance of scientific socialism. None of them have any semblance of being able to muster any kind of fucking class analysis. And the worst part of this whole fucking thing, if it couldn't even be worse just from that, is that these same people have renounced the scientific socialist method of class analysis in favor of like, let's just let the American academic university's notions of intersectionality slowly colonize our ability to have proletarian consciousness and scientific socialist consciousness, and let's make all these concessions. Oh, so guys, historically, we used to be a very white-centric party, and now we're going to start talking about indigenous water preservation techniques. And now we're going to start talking about how we need to take race more into account and gender more into account. And motherfucker, why don't you start with taking class into account, which is square one, which is what you failed to fucking do. All you're doing is flirting with all these lib shit ideas that are funded by the CIA and which come from American academia. Where have you ever actually given us a fucking actual scientific class analysis of what's going on in this country? Sure, you're very good at creating all these broad narratives about the American working class is rising up in this country. Ain't that right, Rosanna? That's an empty, sloganeering, meaningless phrase. Where is the scientific socialist analysis of the class struggle that is now taking place that can produce a tangible and specific analysis of the situation that is not politically and ideologically loaded with lip-shit Democrat prejudices already? Where are you actually having an objective analysis of what the fuck is going on? And can I listen? Joe Sims is the leader of the Communist Party right now, right? if I called him up, and, you know, I'm not going to insult him. He's never insulted me. Anita Waters has insulted me, so I'm going to insult Anita Waters. If I called Anita Waters up, can that stumbling, mumbling buffoon tell me what BlackRock is? I'm going to say, hey, Anita, what is BlackRock? What is the answer she's going to give me? Hey, Anita, what's Amazon? What does Amazon mean for capitalism? What does that tell us about this new age? What would she tell me? She would tell me nothing. And yet she holds the keys to the power of the party deciding its future. And these stumbling, mumbling buffoons who don't know what the fuck they're doing are holding this great historic party hostage to what? To the fucking Democrats, turning it into a fucking interest group for the Democrats. The most pathetic part of all is that the Democrats don't even want them. And then here's what's the most egregious fucking thing that's just unforgivable, because I've been talking about this shit for a long fucking time. The most egregious thing is that since the Ukraine crisis with Russia, the Communist Party has decided to, they've acknowledged that the Communist Party of the Russian Federation has provided a perspective in which they're trying to tell them, hey, we've been calling for this to happen 8 years ago. You don't understand the situation with NATO and the United States. Come and say, well, we've heard you, but still, we're going to say both sides are bad. Both sides. What do you mean both fucking sides are bad? We are very close to a nuclear war right now. It is very possible that one wrong move and the U.S. is going to get involved and it's going to be the end of fucking civilization as we know it. You should be doing everything in your power to combat disinformation and misinformation about what's going on in the war. You should be doing everything in your power to try and educate people about the truth of what's happening in Ukraine, but they're too fucking scared to do that, and they're pussyfooting around the need to do that because they're really scared of the partisan implications of that, because it makes the Democrats look bad, and it makes the MAGA faction of the Republican Party look good, because that's the only fucking mainstream faction in American politics right now that is telling the truth about what's going on in Ukraine. And I'm sick of pretending that that's not the fucking case. I'm sick of pretending like it's not the MAGA Republicans who are the only ones telling the truth about what's happening in Ukraine. They are, objectively. And that's okay. Just because you agree with them about something shouldn't be seen as somehow dangerous or worthy of suspicion or worthy of some kind of fucking contempt. If they're going to denounce war and they're going to denounce the imperialist state machine in some capacity, then you should join them in doing that. It's very fucking simple. Now, I'm not saying you have to wholeheartedly trust them and follow through with them. After all, they're more sympathetic to Russia. They're not very sympathetic to China. We all fucking know that. We should keep that in mind. But when you come to a point of convergence about a primary contradiction, which is imperialism, with a significant portion of an existing current in American politics, that should be ground for building a bridge instead of pussyfooting around it and being like, oh, well, the blue check Democrat mainstream media is saying Putin is the devil and this is being divided along partisan lines, so we're going to just ignore what the Communist Party of the Russian Federation is saying and we're just going to pursue our own lip shit American analysis. I mean, it's an absolute fucking embarrassment. Now, we all know the Communist Party is infiltrated with outright feds. We know that. We know that Taron Fivek, who is single-handedly the most influential voice in the party, because Joe Sims doesn't know what year it is, Anita Waters still doesn't know if she's awake or sleeping, and Rosanna is still in a green screen in some fucking bunker underground in Langley, Virginia, So it's Taryn who's like, Gen X. She's kind of cognizant and aware of what's going on. She is literally a Fed. And she is in the ear of the National Committee. They literally listen to everything she fucking says. She tells them we have to prioritize abortion. She tells them that there's this Duginist menace and Duginist threat that's trying to take over the Communist Party. And it all goes back to Dugin fascism. Listen, motherfuckers, I got banned from Twitch. Every single one of these motherfucking leftists hate me, and I hate them too. Why the fuck do you think I would be scared to come out as a Duginist if I was a fucking Duginist? If I came out as a right-winger or a Duginist, I would get way more popular than the dumb shit that I'm fucking doing right now telling the truth. I would get way more money. I would get way more popular. I would get way more of everything. I'd be way more fucking successful if I were to just say that shit. but I'm stupid and I tell the fucking truth, and that's what puts me in this awkward situation where right-wingers don't trust me and leftists fucking hate me because they think I'm a right-winger myself. The goddamn truth is that I've wore it all on my fucking sleeve. I read Dugin. I like Dugin. He's very brilliant. He's very smart. Is he an idealist? Yes, he is. Is Dugin, is he a Marxist? Does he understand scientific socialism? No, he doesn't. But guess what? Marx drew from a plethora of thinkers that he didn't agree with about everything about. He drew from all sorts of idealists. He drew from all sorts of people that he didn't even agree with politically, even though Dugin politically, he's not even that fucking really bad, honestly, and especially as far as Russian politics are concerned, right? But Taran is trying to blame it on some fucking boogeyman and say, oh, this is a Duginist plot to take over the Communist Party. Taran, shut the fuck up. If we literally just decided to make a fourth position party, we could probably make it bigger than the Communist Party. The Communist Party is the most rundown, decrepit, and almost hopeless party that exists in fucking America right now. We're latching on to the Communist Party not because we're Duginists who want to secretly take it over and we're going to hide our Duginist beliefs. It's because we're communists. And that's our fucking home. If you're a communist in America, your home should be the Communist Party. You stop pussyfooting around and being, oh, we're going to do DSA entryism. DSA entryism? What? Why? Tell me the logic and rationality of that. If you're a Marxist-Leninist and if you're a communist, why the fuck are you associating yourself with the goddamn DSA? Why? Because they're popular and they have the name socialism in their name? Well, guess what? There was the National Socialists in Germany. They had the name socialism in their fucking name. Does that mean you have to go and engage with them just because they're giving new light and credence to the fucking word socialism? No, you don't have to do that. We shouldn't be ashamed of calling ourselves communists. We shouldn't wear that with some kind of shame, be like, oh, that's going to scare away the American masses. No, it's fucking not. The word communism is cool. It's interesting. I mean, even if it did scare people away, that's just temporary. You gotta, what did they say in the Communist Manifesto? The communists disdain to conceal their views. We disdain to conceal our views. We wear it on our chest and we wear it on our sleeve. We don't sit here and try to hide what we fucking are and bow our heads down in shame and say, oh, communism is scary. That word is scary. No, it's not fucking scary. That's a glorious word. That's a glorious word that's attached to a glorious history. And it's time we defend that history in this country because guess what? It does have a history in this country. Communists in this country played a very noble role in its history, a role that's worth defending and preserving and carrying on into the next generation. And yet the CPUSA and its leadership is more concerned kissing the ass of the Democrats and throwing this new, youth that's joining the CPUSA like lambs to like sheep to the fucking slaughter to the Democratic Party, sacrificing any semblance of working class independence or dignity on its own part. And it's absolutely pathetic that they've allowed literal feds like Taran Fivek to infiltrate the party and basically control its direction and turn this party into a what? Tell me what, materially speaking, has the Communist Party ever assumed a position that's deviated from the Soros agenda? That's deviated from the fucking Arabella advisors agenda? Has it ever deviated once from that agenda? Has it ever questioned that agenda? Has it ever taken a position contrary to their agenda, that so-called progressive agenda that they have? No, it fucking hasn't. It absolutely hasn't. They don't have any new ideas. They don't have any ideas for the future. They don't offer anything to the American people. And they're in a very unique role to do that because we're facing a change comparable to the change that Marx was witnessing in the 19th century. We are witnessing a transformation comparable to the rise of industrial capitalism in the 19th century. That's how profound this change is. Communists should be at the forefront of being able to make sense of that change instead of fucking tailing behind the Democrats and the ruling class. Now, I know there's so-called Communist Party members in this fucking space, And I want you to step up and justify and explain the horrific, inexcusable behavior of the leadership of the CPUSA, and go ahead and defend the current direction of the party. Go ahead and get in here and tell people why they should agree with the current line of the party. Go ahead. Go ahead. And if you're a member of the party who wants to speak out and share your experiences and expose the bullshit, go ahead and speak up. Tell us about what's going on. And don't be scared of getting repercussions, because we're going to start the struggle sessions. We're going to storm the fucking headquarters, and we're going to raise hell in this goddamn party until we turn it into a party of the working class, of millions and millions of people, a party that it's deserving of the name Communist Party of the United States of America. So why don't we get people to go ahead and request, to go ahead and either justify the current trajectory of the Communist Party or share their experiences within the party. And because we need to start talking about this shit. I know a lot of you hold it in, and you hold in a lot, and you don't really reveal all that much because you're scared. You don't want to make the party look bad. The party already looks bad. So let's air out the dirty laundry and let's bring it to the fore, because there's no way to make this private. There's no way to make this private, because they haven't given us any private outlets with which to critique them. So we're going to do it all in public. We're going to do all this in public.